This world can be a dark, lonely place. It's easy to lose your way. The light from your dreams becomes harder to chase. The words won't come, you don't know what to say. When we come together, the storms we can weather. Don't let go of me, we'll get through this, you'll see. Like pictures from the past, we were meant to last. There's nothing we can't do when we come together. United we stand, divided we fall. This is the battle cry that unites us all. Come with me, let's show what we can do. We can't do it without you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome in. Welcome in. Welcome to Conversations with Christy. How are you? I am so glad that each and every one of you are here. Let's take a moment to say hi to people. We've got Teresa with Wounds to Wisdom. Hello, Teresa. I'm glad you're here. She said she is really excited for this conversation, Amber. We've got this guy, Morgan. I'm so glad you're here. Sophia's Roulette. Nice to meet you. Richard, as always, so good to see you. You guys, I'm super excited for this conversation. So, with that, let's go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to, this guy, Morgan, that's my coworker. I work with him. So,
oh, how exciting!
yeah.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, I'm glad that there are people from your channel showing up too. Guys, from my channel, Amber does have a channel. So if you have not yet followed her on her channel, make sure to do that as well. And so I think I've got so much that I want to talk to you about. So instead of my normal, waffle at the beginning, we're just going to kind of get into it. So I wanted to start off by saying I actually met Amber through Cynthia, and Cynthia has been on the show several times. I love Cynthia. She is such an amazing soul. And I was kind of looking for people to interview, people to meet, and she's like, you really need to talk to this person. And so because I trust Cynthia so much, I was like, all right, absolutely. So I got in touch with Amber. And one of the things that I like to do before I um, have anybody on the show or do like an official invite is to Amber, do you have the link to your channel? Can you drop
Yeah,
it in
let me
chat?
grab it really quick.
Yeah, we'll have her do that because, guys, I'm operating off of my phone and it will go completely haywire if I try. But we'll definitely drop that link. So, one of the things that I do is I always get together with the person that I'm going to be talking to and give them a chance to get to know me, and I can get to know them and just kind of see if it's a good fit. And so I've actually known Amber's story from the very first time um, that we chatted, and we touched a little bit on it in the first interview, but I think we're going to get a lot more into it today. And I've got to say that having heard her story and then gotten to know her has made me have like such a much deeper level of respect and admiration for everything that has gone on. And I am really, really excited to be able to share this. Uh oh, Cynthia. Oh, okay, that's you. Okay, yay.
Which one, Cynthia?
Sophia's Roulette said, as a side, Cynthia right here. Yay!
Oh,
I'm
okay.
so glad. So before and Ben might pop up a little later. So if he does, we'll have him drop the link as well. And if not, I'll drop it in the comments afterwards if we can't get it dropped. So, Amber, I want to start out. I always ask my guests two questions. What is inspiring you right now? And what is your biggest accomplishment or goal that you have achieved lately that you would like to share with us?
So, what is inspiring me right now? So I think just growth. Um, I think we're all in a like transition period.
Yeah.
I mean, the energies that are coming in to Earth right now, they're supportive, but they're also um they're challenging,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
so I'm in a season of growth, and I am so excited to announce that as of yesterday, I completed my last real estate test, and so I'm like this close to becoming a licensed real estate professional in Arkansas. And
Yay!
yeah, I'm so excited about that because it was hard. It was really hard. I haven't done like school or anything in a long time, and the course was intensive, and then the
Right.
studying up to the test was very intensive. It took a lot of discipline, and I fell short. Like I did not feel like I studied what I needed to study. But like yesterday when I went in, I
Uh-huh.
wore my moonstone earrings,
Love
and
it.
I can't remember what necklace I had on, but I had like my bracelets and stuff. And I was just like, okay, the moonstone, it's going to help me know the unknown if I don't know the answer to a question. And,
Mm,
like I do that every single day. Like if I'm going to work, because I work as a server at Cheddar's,
wow.
and if I'm going to work, I will accessorize, for abundance, to promote abundance and stuff. Thank you,
Right.
Teresa. Thank you so much. I've been like texting and calling everybody I could think of, anybody that I think would care, because I just feel so proud of myself.
You
And
should.
at first, when I thought about going into real estate, well, my husband and we started a real estate investment business. We bought our first property in June. We closed on
Mhm.
it like at the end of May, beginning of June, and we've been working on it. It's got 3 doors on one property. We got the first unit rented out, and about a month into that, my husband was like, maybe even just a couple of weeks, he's like, you should be a real estate agent. And at first, I'm like, "No, I'm a healer. Like, I've got my
Mm,
path." I'm like, and I'm like, "Okay, wait a minute. Let me stop, because, I try to do everything spirit led.
right.
I want to be in alignment with my highest good, and I have the understanding that my physical mind doesn't always know what is my highest good. So I focus on following the breadcrumbs. And I did a tarot reading, and I
Mhm.
consulted ChatGPT. You know how much I love ChatGPT.
Yes.
And I tried, I just like explored, okay, what would this look like for me? And am I betraying the path that I set myself on? And everything was like, no, if anything, this is going to expand your outreach. This is going to, just really help you. If my finances are taken care of, then I can really focus on the healing work and the guidance that I want to provide in the world. So that's ultimately what the card said, and that's why I am doing this. And plus, I see your home as your most sacred space. And so when I started looking at it as I get to help people find their most sacred space, and I get, and I'm, I love people. I'm great at communicating, so I know that people can tell me what they want, and I can find it, or close to it. So like there's just a lot of, I had to put a spiritual spin on it, because I know realtors don't always have, they can be known to be like pushy or annoying and things like that. I don't ever want to be that. But
Right.
yeah, so I'm really excited for this next chapter, and I'm counting on this to free up some of my time and energy to be able to focus on um, Healing Society, on my business, Sacred Heart Alternative Therapy, and Amber Ascends, which, let me go ahead and announce this. I have decided to start a podcast. It's going to be called the Healing Society Podcast. And I'm going to start interviewing people about their spiritual awakening and, just spiritual path, and just kind of like what I'm doing with you, just stories of overcoming things. Because most of the time, what I found is, when people are like making life changing decisions, or like they're changing their lives for the better, there's usually a spiritual component to that. And I want to know, I want all those stories, and I want to share them,
Right.
because those stories have helped me with my spiritual journey.
Yeah,
So some stuff to
absolutely.
look forward to.
Yes. And I think it's beautiful to, I just see you as an amazing realtor, of like, oh, this would be a beautiful home for you. And like, and treating it as such a sacred thing to be able to help somebody find. I just see this as right up your alley, honestly. So I'm so excited to hear, and keep us posted. We
Absolutely.
want to celebrate your first home sale and all of that. And I'm so glad that your husband encouraged you to do that. Um,
Yeah.
I wanted
Me
to say
too.
hi to John Clark. Hello, I'm glad you're here. Richard says being a part of helping people find homes can be a part of their healing and wholeness. Cool.
So, can I share a quick story?
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to share the story about the home that I'm living in right now. This is my first house that we ever bought. Homeownership was a dream for a very long time for me. I grew up really poor, and, low income housing and things like that. And then in my adult life, apartments, duplexes. I think maybe once or twice I rented a house. And I I can't tell you how many times before 2020, when I bought this house, that I would just turn on random streets and drive up the road and look at the beautiful neighborhoods and just imagine my family. Like, I feel myself tearing up right now, because it felt so far out of reach, but I knew that I had to hold on to my dream. And so for years and years, or when I would go to somebody's home and it was just so beautiful and homey and it was theirs, like there was just something about that I wanted for myself. And so my husband was incarcerated 2015 to 2020. I was incarcerated from 2015 to 2017. When I got out in 2017, which we'll talk a little bit more about that part of my journey, I was like a girl on fire. Like, I was just I just had this appreciation and passion for life. And I'm like, I can do anything. I can do anything. So I started working on my credit. I found a local organization that actually helped me with like coaching and guidance on how to improve my credit well enough. And they actually had a down payment assistance program and other things that I got to, but so from 2017 to 2020, I was working on my credit, and I was a server at Cheddar's at that time as well. There was a gap. But I was claiming all of my tips, which I know you're supposed to claim all of them anyway, but, newsflash, not all servers do.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I did. And because of that, and whenever my husband got out, we started looking, and he was a little scared. He was like, I don't know if now's the right time. I just got this job. And, and I was just like, no, it has to be now. It has to be now. Like, I couldn't see another way. I'd been working so
Right.
hard. And
Right.
then there was not a good inventory at that time. There were so few houses in my price range. My budget was $120,000 max. We couldn't use Casey's income because he just got out of prison in March, and we're looking like, May, June. That's really when we started looking. So we looked at several different houses, and it was like, meh. And then our realtor showed us this house. which shout out to Emily King. She's our realtor. I absolutely adore her. We also work with Kathleen Wimberly here in Fort Smith. So I'm just shouting them out to give them credit for all the beautiful help that they've given to our family. And I, would look on Zillow, and then I would actually drive to see in person because the pictures don't represent the feel. And when I dropped my daughter off at school one day, and I drove up the street that leads to our street, and all of these beautiful mature trees. There were 2 old ladies walking. Like all the yards were manicured. Like this was the kind of neighborhood that I was looking for. And I drove up to the house, and I saw Cynthia just commented, "It's a beautiful house on the hill." It is on the hill, and it is so pretty. I love my house. And I saw it, and I was like, oh my God, I love this house. So we got to look at it. And I come in, and realtor gets a showing. This house is $15,000 over our budget, worth every penny of what the seller was asking for. I walked in, and there were scriptures all over. And you guys know, like at the time I was a Christian, still a follower of Jesus, but those scriptures, like, they spoke to me. I was like, and one of the scriptures is still, I left them all. It's still here. So it had two of my scriptures, which Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, trust the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, in all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. It's one of my main scriptures. The other one is, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And that is still on the door that goes to my sunroom. It's like a sliding glass door. And I saw these, and there was nothing spectacular about this house. Like, it's dated. I wasn't crazy about, like, it had the wooden paneling. Like, it was, I still have like the parquet floors or whatever the heck they're calling.
Oh, right.
Or they're called, which, I mean, they, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Like the butter. Just remember the butter.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're pretty, but it's dated. It's just not, there wasn't anything spectacular, but these scriptures spoke to me, and the feel. As soon as I walked in, I could see my family in this home. And so I looked at my realtor, and after we got done, and I was like, we want to put an offer. And she said, okay. She said, this is a seller's market though, and you're only pre-approved for 15,000 less. So she's like, I wouldn't count on it. I said, I don't care. Put the offer in. Put the offer in, and I hit my knees like I never had before. I was like, God, please, I need this house. I need this house. I was like, please, if there's anything that you can do, this owner, she loves you. She loves Jesus. I love Jesus, and I just was like, all the things. And then I got the call the next day that she accepted the offer. I'm like tearing up just thinking about it because it was such a good memory. I cried. I made a post on Facebook. I was like, praise God. My God, my prayers are answered. And I got the chance to meet the owner and did a final walkthrough. And I shared that story with her. And she said, even though I know I could have gotten more for this house, I just felt like I felt compelled to accept this offer. And like, I got chills right now. I got chills because it was a God thing. And then, and this was in 2020, right after this, the houses just went, through the roof for this area. I mean, it was nothing to get a house for $100,000 in this area. And, oh, that's good. I'm glad, Teresa. You know how it feels. It feels, it feels so good. And so getting into this, it was a turning point for my family. And anyway, I just wanted to share that story because it's just such a good story, a God story, universe, spirit, whatever you want to call it. I believe that all those terms are interchangeable. But I had some energetic support. And so it was meant to be. And it's been it hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows, my life this past 5 years, which we're going to get into that. But yep. And now I can help do that for other people, Cynthia. That is right. That is so right. And that's why once I looked at it from that perspective, I was like, this is for me. This is a good career choice. And also, I found a really amazing broker to work for. I'm actually going to be working with Emily and Kimberly, our family realtors. And yeah, they're the ones that got me in. They put a good word in for me. They wrote letters of recommendation for me to send with the state because, as you all know, I have a pretty serious criminal background. So, in real estate, they want you to be trustworthy and, have a level of integrity. And I had multiple people that vouched for me and wrote some beautiful letters. And it's really helped me with this journey. So.
That's awesome. That's so beautiful. I love that we're kind of starting out on this high note because I do want to circle back to the beginning, to your childhood. And I kind of want to go through your childhood and like your teenage years and then talk as much as you want to, and we'll kind of break. I don't expect you to just, go through, but I want to ask you some questions.
Okay.
So growing up, what was it like in your house? You yourself. Well, let's just say this right now. So you were addicted to methamphetamines. You were an alcoholic, and you ultimately went to prison for drugs. And we're going to get into that. So this is not, as you said, this is not little time stuff that kind of happened, which is why I think it's so beautiful that you are where you are. Just to say that, because most of you guys don't know this about me, but Michael's sister, so my sister-in-law on his side, she went to prison for 5 years for dealing drugs, cooking meth, dealing drugs. She got her kids taken away, and I didn't get to meet her for like 5 or 6 years. And when I met her, it was nothing like meeting you. It was a whole different story. And so, just that alone. So did you grow up and share only as much as you want to? I don't want to, what was your childhood like? Like, did you grow up in church? You said that you guys were poor. Like, what did your childhood look like?
So I was born into a household of addicts. My mom was an addict. My dad was an addict. My grandma, who lived in the household with us, was an addict. And so was my uncle, all in the same household. My mom had me when she was 17, ran away from home when she was 15. And my paternal grandma took her in. And that's so sweet. So, being born into that, of course, I don't remember like from the time I was like 1 and 2 years old. I don't really remember that anymore. But I was affected by that. The addiction didn't stop after I was born. There was actually a point that I was taken away, put in foster care on 2 separate occasions. And so were my brother and sister. And it was due to addiction. My dad was a big time partier and my mom was with my dad. And so, of course, a lot of stuff was going on in our house. People were calling CPS. It was called CPS in California. And after the last time that we got taken away, my parents split up because my mom, she was, she quit the drugs and was doing everything that she could to get us back. And my dad would chance it and just like drink a bunch of water, the stuff that you do to pass drug tests. I know you haven't ever been there, but maybe some other people have. And I certainly have been there before. So, my mom left my dad. I think I must have been maybe like 3 or 4 years old by the time that was. And my parents kind of made a pact, and they're like, whoever is most suited to take care of the kids, that's who will have custody. They didn't involve the courts or anything. And shortly after I got home with my parents or whatever, they got us back, I ended up living with my dad.
Mhm.
And you know, that was really hard. My grandma was a truck driver, so she was on the road, so I was just with my dad, and I was left to pretty much care for my brother and sister. At 5 years old, I remember walking myself to school at 5 years old in Lakewood, California, Bellflower. It was Bellflower at that time. You know, very unsafe place for a kid
Yeah,
to be
not a
walking
place to
around.
be.
Yeah, I remember, you know, having very limited food. Um, and I actually learned how to make pancakes when I was 5 years old because nobody would cook for us. So I taught myself how to cook, learned how to make ramen and eggs and things like that. And eventually, I ended up with my dad or went back with my mom. But I actually wanted to share a story really quick.
Yeah.
Um, there were these apartments we were living at. My dad went to jail for the weekend or whatever. He broke his leg or like sprained it or something running from the cops. He was like jumping a wall or something. And so he was arriving in a taxi. And he sent me and my brother out to the car to go get his bags. And it, you know, is a pretty busy street in Southern California. And the taxi was parked across the street. And I knew to look both ways. My brother was right there with me. He didn't look both ways. And luckily, he didn't get hit by a car, but like his leg hit the car as it was going by because he walked and then he stopped. And he had like this huge bruise on his leg. And it was very traumatizing for, you know,
Yeah.
a 5-year-old. My dad ended up coming out there and getting my brother and stuff. But, you know, that's the kind of stuff that happens to kids raised by drug addicts. And I ended up back with my mom. I don't remember how it happened, but I was relieved because, you know, I didn't have so much of a burden as to care for my brother and sister, care for myself. Um, but the thing is that my mom ended up with a very abusive man, and they were drug dealers. Mostly they just used, but they sold drugs as well. I wasn't aware of this at the time. It's
Mhm.
stuff that I became aware of later on in life.
Mhm.
Um, but this man, he was a very broken person. He was abused as a child. And so he had a really, really bad temper. He never hurt me or my sister. He beat the shit out of my mom. He hurt my brother many times. And yeah, but my mom, even though, you know, she knew that situation wasn't good for her, she didn't have any support. My nana, my mom's mom, she wouldn't
Mhm.
talk to my mom. Um, or, you know, after I was first born, because I was born, my mom was 17 and I was born out of wedlock and all that. So basically, she didn't want anything to do with us until my mom was 18 and married. I don't know, she wasn't even married, so it didn't really make sense. But um, my mom just was like, screw them. Like, I don't need my family. Well, it ended up not having a support system, ended up in, had her end up in a very hard situation that she didn't feel like she could get out of because she had 3 young kids and no means to make a decent living and provide housing for and food and all of that for her and her 3 young kids. And plus, you know, she'd never been on her own really because she left home at 15 years old and moved right in with my dad and my grandma and everybody. And so she did not believe that she could support us on her own. So she stayed around. She stuck around. And you know, there were good times. I remember so many good times about my childhood and about like when we lived with that guy. You know, he was like a father to me and he loved me and my siblings and stuff. He was just broken. And he had, you know, he was raised by a person with a really bad temper. So
Yeah.
naturally, you know, he didn't know how to process the things that he had inside of him. which of course I didn't know that at the time. I just thought some people were just really angry.
Mhm.
But we got to a point when I was 8 or 9 years old, and we had moved. I went to a different school just about every year of elementary. We moved a lot, and we were living with some of my mom and her boyfriend's friends. And I remember we had a meeting, a family meeting, and they said we want to move to Arkansas. So her boyfriend's family was from Arkansas, and they wanted to talk to us kids about it. And I remember thinking, it's got to be better than this. Life is hard here, so hard, constant struggle. And I was just very aware of the money problems and, the familial problems within the household and everything. And I don't know, something felt like Arkansas would be good. So
Mhm.
we traveled to Arkansas. We had like an old truck and a camper that we pulled behind. I don't even know where we got the camper. We never went camping. I
Right.
have no idea where that camper came from, but we used it as a means to haul whatever we would haul. And my mom and her boyfriend, they quit doing drugs once they got to Arkansas. And my mom got a job at Harps, and she was making decent money, and she realized that she could support us on her own. So she left the guy, and we moved into town. We were living in a small town. If anybody that's watching is from the Fort Smith, Arkansas area, we lived in a small town called Bonanza, Arkansas, population like less than 500. It was a little one horse town. There was one convenience store and one bank that was like just had like a drive through or a walk up. You couldn't even go inside the bank.
Oh, wow.
And but it was beautiful. Like things felt different in Arkansas. And that's really when I started becoming interested in Jesus. My mom's boyfriend's uh, dad and grandma that we lived with, they were kind of involved in the church, and so we went to this little tiny, teeny, tiny church and started learning about Jesus, which I had, I knew about Jesus. My grandma, my dad's mom, she taught me about Jesus, and I just kind of always knew like that God was real, and I always believed in God, but just no religion. There was no like going to church as a family or anything. Like we never prayed. We barely sat down at the table for dinner together. The kids might sit at the table, and then the adults would eat in front of the TV or something. But the only time we could really count on sitting down as a family was during the holidays. And for a long, like still to this day, Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday because it was one of the only times that we sat down as a family. And once we were in Arkansas, my mom left this guy. We were living on our own, and my mom met her current husband, Rick, that's my dad. If I introduce him, I say this is my dad.
Mhm.
And that's when things started to change at home. But that's also when my addiction started shortly after that time. So my mom was working nights, and I was in junior high, and I kind of got in with the wrong crowd, started smoking weed, started drinking alcohol, wasn't doing anything hard or like no pills or anything like that. But and I was honestly kind of scared of that kind of stuff. You'd hear about, the kid that took ecstasy one time and died. So I'm like, I don't want to die, so I kind of stayed away from that type of stuff. But you know, I felt at that point I felt like I had already lived a lifetime, and I felt really mature,
Mhm.
and I just wanted to experience life. I started having sex at 12 years old. Um, and that was really damaging. Um, and I just kind of spiraled for a long time. Um, it was it, several years, I was still going to school. I was on the honor roll. I just party with my friends like on the weekends or whatever, smoke pot and stuff. Typical teenage stuff, in my opinion. Maybe some people are like, oh, that's not typical. But I mean, my mom did the same damn thing pretty much. And I mean, everybody else that I knew that was my age that I hung out with was doing the same kind of stuff. So it seemed pretty typical. Through that group of friends, there were some older people, some that were adults as well. And that's how I was introduced to meth. And that's when life started to spiral.
So I wanted to ask you, okay, so sex at 12 years old, how did you, well, okay, so let me back up. So my husband, who also has not really uh lived, he had a very difficult childhood, like, you know, um, he says he feels like he's lived, 3 lives. So that's a
Mhm,
common thing that I noticed, that a lot of people who have had very difficult childhood have said, I feel like I have lived 3, 4, 5 different lifetimes already. And I always find that interesting because I feel like it's been one continuous life. I don't have these breaks in my
mhm,
story where I feel like, oh, wow. So at 12 years old, and without getting into all the nitty gritty and everything, like, what was your, like, did you do that because you were like looking for love, or just you thought that that's just like everybody else was doing it, and so you're like, why not? I mean, that's always been an interesting thing to me, is like how a child, because when I was 12
mhm,
years old, I had such body dysmorphia. I was starving myself. I mean, 12 years old is a pretty volatile age for girls anyway.
mhm.
Probably boys too. I'm not a boy. I'm not going to speak to that. I don't know. But like, and was there a point where you like thought, wow, this could have some serious consequences? Or like, how did that look? And then how old were you when you started using that? Because I kind of interrupt your story before you got to that
Yeah,
part.
don't worry. So I think, reflecting on it, when I was maybe 7 or 8 years old, I found a tape in my parents' bedroom, in my mom and her boyfriend's bedroom, and it said Cinderella, but it was not Cinderella, it was pornography. And I watched that and I was intrigued. I'm like,
Mhm.
what is this? And it kind of like, even at 8 years old, felt stuff in my body. And so anytime I had the chance, I would, like, if my parents were gone, I was home alone, I would sneak in there and watch pornography. And I was like just really interested in it. And I probably started masturbating by the time I was like 9. Um, and then, you know, I just felt like the next step is sex and I just want to experience it. I want to know what it's like. And yeah, I was in junior high and at these parties, and there were boys that liked me. And I had this boy that, like, just was serenading me or whatever you want to call it. And we had the opportunity to have sex. My mom worked nights, so we did it at my house. And after that first time, then it really wasn't a big deal to me. If I had a
Mhm.
boyfriend, we were going to have sex. That's just how it was. Or even if I didn't have a boyfriend, maybe I'd end up having sex. So that's kind of how that ended up like that. But I think that all the responsibility that I had as a child,
Mhm.
and I just I felt more grown up than I actually was.
Right.
And so, started having sex at 12. By the time I was 14, I had my first serious relationship. And lo and behold, this guy was abusive. I had my first abusive relationship at 14 years old. You know, actually, yeah, I do think that. I do think that pornography was my first addiction. It was hidden. And, of course, my mom, nobody else. I never told another soul. I think I, eventually told my husband, but I don't even think I've ever shared this with anybody else. Um, so yeah, I do think that that was my first addiction, and I knew it was wrong for a child to be watching that type of stuff, but I was just so intrigued by it, so I couldn't help myself. And I had responses within my body that felt good, and I didn't grow up in a family that we weren't sex wasn't a shameful thing. It wasn't like, yeah, of course kids don't have sex, but it was just a natural part of life, and I just felt like I had the maturity to experience it at 12 years old, and I was given the opportunity. And actually, interestingly, I had never gotten high until after so I actually had sex before I even got high
Oh,
on
wow.
weed. Yeah, yeah. So that interesting. But I
That
started. Go ahead.
did that make you nervous when you had girls, and they hit that age? Did you have conversations with them where did you think back at that point to say something, or were you at a different place in life where you were just thinking about different things?
So when my okay, so my youngest daughter is at the age, she's 11, so she's right around that age, and then my older daughter is 17. So when my older daughter came, she was 11 or 12. She was still pretty immature for her
Mhm,
age,
mhm,
and she didn't really I wasn't really worried about it with her, though we did have
mhm, mhm,
talks.
mhm.
I did explain the dangers
Right,
of
right,
situations where
right.
they could be taken advantage of. So yeah, I did explain that, but like my 17-year-old, like she's never even had a serious relationship. And my 11-year-old, she is she claim she's a lesbian. So she's not interested in
Okay,
boys.
there you
So
go.
yeah.
Right,
So
right.
so that's kind of a relief, but it's interesting when, your kid claims that and then she wants to have girlfriends over, but I'm like, she's not into that, it's not.
Right,
But,
right, right.
of course, like me and my mom, we've talked about this. She's like, Do you worry about that?" I'm like, "I think about that and I keep an eye on them just to be sure."
Right,
So,
right.
um, but yeah, it's not they're not they're different than me. And even though they had their trauma,
Mhm.
from the choices that I made.
Right.
Um, by the time they hit those ages, like I had it pretty well together. And
Good.
so I was able to keep an eye on things and, to really guide them and it's not something that I worry about. Of course, now my daughter's
Right.
17, so it would not
Yeah.
surprise me if she started, but I don't think she has. So
Right,
thank
right.
you,
And I
Jesus.
didn't mean to get too personal. It just I always
It's
find
fine.
that interesting, when I find
Mhm.
people who kind of engage in that activity at a younger age. I think of myself at that age, and
Mhm.
I would not have had any idea. And so I'm always like, um I always just find it interesting, how one,
Yeah,
ends up there. So thank you for sharing that with us.
of
So
course.
now you're older, or maybe
Mhm.
not much older, and you're introduced to meth. So how old were you
Yeah.
when that happened? Was that something that your parents did? Like when you say that they use drugs, is that
Mhm.
what they did? Did you know what this was when you seen it? Like, did you have any thoughts like, oh, this could be bad? Like, walk us through how that presented itself.
So this was after I was out of the abusive relationship that I was in. I was, I was with a guy who was, physically abusive for about a year, 14 to 15. and and it was a really hard breakup. Like, he ended up breaking up with me. During that relationship, I was, because of the abuse, it really caused me to kind of like be a brat. Like, I was just like unreasonable, and I like couldn't think clearly. And, what happened was, because he abused me, I felt like he owed me anything that I wanted, his time, his energy, just I felt like he owed me everything. And, with all that turmoil and everything, obviously it, pushed him away. And that was really hard because I felt like, like, you don't get to decide. Like, I get to decide. You're the one who hurt me. Anyway, we time went on and it did get easier, but it it was really hard to get over. It was really hard to get over because having that relationship and thinking that you're in love, and then it's, all goes away. So that's kind of the frame of mind that I was in when I started doing meth. I just didn't care. I just didn't care. I just I knew that my parents had been on meth. I knew that that was their drug of choice. And the people that I was hanging out with, there was just one night we were at a party, and everybody had been drinking, and somebody pulls out a meth pipe and just starts passing it around. And I'm just like, fuck it. So I did it. And stayed up all night. I actually remember I had a babysitting gig. I had to babysit the next day. Felt really weird to be there, like all high babysitting and stuff. But after that point, I started just connecting with people through meth, and we just, sit around and get high together. And I was still in school. I was in high school, and it was, let's see what happened. This went on for quite a while. Like, I was, like, not hardcore, I didn't have all kinds of money or anything to do the drugs, but I had access to it,
Right.
whatever form. And there was a time when we had just moved and I got switched. We have two high schools here in town, Northside and Southside. I had been going to Northside, but because we moved, I was now at Southside. But I was in JROTC. So then they only had that program at Northside. So I went for the last period to JROTC every day. And I'd I had carried my purse. I'd have my meth pipe and my drugs in my purse every day. And I would, or the girl that drove me there to the school from the other school, she was in the same class. She's like, we pull up in the parking lot. She's like, you want to smoke a joint? And, this is like back in like 2004 or 2003. Cameras weren't a thing back then, but apparently the school had just installed cameras and we didn't realize that. So we get done smoking the joint. Right as we're getting done, somebody's knocking on the window and we open the door and he's like, whew, dang, girls. Call the cops. They get the cops out there and they go through my purse. They find all my paraphernalia, drugs and stuff. I go to jail. And yeah, and I ended up on house arrest for like 3 months. I did 60 hours of community service, and actually I think it's 6 months on house arrest and then like 60 or 90 days in rehab or something like that. I can't remember the order of the punishment, but I did the house arrest first, like a few days in jail. Parents bailed me out, house arrest, waiting to get into a rehab program. And then I went to court, and then I was ordered 60 hours of community service. But even though I went to rehab, got out of rehab, and like within 2 days, I was using again.
And how old were you
So,
at this point?
16. I was 16 at that point. So I had a pretty good stretch of doing this. And, to be honest, that time, like I have some flashes of memory from that time, but I don't remember very much from 15 and 16. I have like just some images of myself and my friends and, just like some of the things that we did. But like as far as the details, they're really foggy. But obviously I do remember that day. And then I remember getting hooked again. And then I started I'd met this friend through the outpatient rehab program,
Mhm.
and she had parties at her house all the time and stuff. And through this friend, I met the father of my son, Cameron.
Mhm.
And this man was in his 20s. I was 16. And he would invite young girls to his apartment, and like we would basically all take turns having sex with him. And I ended up getting pregnant by this man, and he was married. So yeah, that and once I got pregnant, that's at that point, that's what it took to get me to walk away from the drugs. When I found out I was pregnant with my son, it was like I had always dreamed of being a mother. Like I remember dreams from my childhood, having a baby, holding that baby in my arms, and just feeling the love and the joy from that baby. I always knew I was going to be a mom. Always knew it.
Yeah.
So I had to do the right thing for my son. I quit hanging out with all my friends. I didn't talk to anybody anymore. The guy that got me pregnant, he said that he was going to leave his wife for me. I'm like, whoa, 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 don't do that. I don't want a relationship with you. I'd rather do this by myself than be with you. And I had the support of my mom and my dad and my sister and my brother. I had a couple of friends that, we had gone through all of that together. But I had my son about a month after I graduated from high school. I walked 8 months pregnant. My shoes wouldn't fit the sandals that I had bought. It was crazy. I was at the school. I was at the kind of the wealthier side of town, that school.
Mhm.
And so there was only one other pregnant girl in the whole school. Yeah. I felt so out of place. I felt like I didn't belong to anything. I just focused on my schoolwork though and got through the pregnancy, and I gained a lot of weight, a lot of weight. I was over 200 pounds by the time I had my son. I was really self-conscious and stuff, but once I had him, I was really motivated to do something with my life. And I had the support from my mom. And so I did a little bit of college. I did 1 semester of college. I didn't end up going back because I just felt like I missed out on too much with my son. And I felt it was just really hard because I was working as well. And it felt too hard. I just didn't want life to be that hard. So I quit.
So what did
And
your
then
mom and dad say? All of this. So you get arrested, you're in jail, you now have to go to rehab, then you got pregnant. Like, what was your parents' reaction to all of this?
so my dad, my stepdad, it was really confusing for him because he saw me as like this just angelic child, because I was really a good child. I did everything that was asked of me, and they could count on me to help with my brothers and sister and things like that. So it was really surprising for them that I was going down that road. My mom understood because she had been there too.
Mhm.
And so she was just trying to support me and guide me. And my dad, you know, he's a very outspoken person. And I remember one time driving in the car and we were just talking about life or what. I can't remember what the conversation is, but I do remember one thing that he said to me, and he said, "You're probably going to end up pregnant before you graduate high school." And yeah, and so um I don't know, subconsciously when somebody hears that, you're like, well, I guess that's what's expected of you. And so you're just kind of reckless. You're not careful. You don't care. You think, and these thoughts aren't conscious. They're subconscious
Of
thoughts.
course. Right,
Like I
right,
never,
right.
I never set out to, have a teen pregnancy. But at the same time, um, I had this belief about God that God punished you when you're not living your life for him or when you're not, doing things the right way.
Mhm.
And I felt like there could be a chance that God wouldn't give me a baby, that I
Mm.
would be one of those people who couldn't have kids. That was my biggest fear. Imagine having that as your biggest fear as a 16-year-old. So I was reckless. I let my birth control expire, and I honestly, part of me just wanted to see if I could get pregnant, if I could have kids. I wanted to know. And I did get pregnant. It was actually I found out just a few days after my 16th birthday. And then, or it was a few days, no, it was a few days before my 17th birthday is when I got pregnant. So, yeah, but
Stuck
my
in the door.
parents,
Sweetie's head is stuck in the door. You keep
oh,
talking. I will
okay.
be right back.
Okay. So, my parents, I really didn't get in trouble for like those things, for, the stuff that happened at the high school where they caught us smoking pot and I got caught with all that paraphernalia and stuff. But I the punishments that I received, like the statutory punishments or whatever the hell you want to call them, like I think my parents felt like those were great enough that I really didn't get punished. And also I was really good at like lying and deceiving my parents. Oh, I'm just going to hang out with my friend, even though my friend was having like a big party and adult boys were going to be there and stuff like that. I would just like leave those details out. But I don't know. My mom was always just a very understanding. She still is to this day, just a very understanding person. And she always, like she was not like a controlling person. It was, she's kind of like I am as a mom. She was a guide and she was there for me, like no matter what. I knew that my mom would be there for me no matter what. And but also I could manipulate my mom, and so I could talk her into letting me do things that I probably had no business doing as a
Right.
teenager. But you know, um, I remember like my mom. We had always been against abortion, um,
Mhm.
and not, my mom was always like, I understand some people, but I personally just, I could never do that. And, she talked about those beliefs with us. So I adopted that belief as well. But I remember after I got pregnant, my mom coming to me and she's like, I would not look down on you if you decided to get an abortion. And I'm like, no, I want this baby, I wanted to be a mother. So, and later on, my mom told me that my mama, my step grandmother, was trying to tell her to like sneak me the morning after pill or like an abortion pill or something. And my mom's like, I'm not doing that. So, so yeah, I had the baby. I had Cameron, and it was an easy pregnancy. I ended up having a C-section with him, and then after, like I said, after I got out or got done having him, I ended up going to school. I had a job. I worked at J.C. Penney, and addicts were
That's
bad
so
liars. There
true.
would be a lot less of them. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you learn how to lie. You learn how to lie to anybody because you don't want to make yourself look bad. You know, you have this image that the world sees you as, and you want to maintain that image. So other than an occasional drink of alcohol, smoke my pot or whatever, other than that, though, I walked away from meth. Didn't look back. Like it wasn't even a choice for me. If anybody like that I knew was doing it, I just distanced myself from that person. And then I met my husband when I was 19, and we were together for probably about 6 years, 6 or 7 years. And he ended up getting hooked on meth. When we had met, he had moved from California to Arkansas to get away from drugs. And, you know, I had that past as well. So we kind of connected on that level. But more than that, we had a soul connection. And we, you know, we smoked pot, we drank occasionally. We didn't really care about drinking. But we had moved to California, lived there for 5 years. We moved back to Arkansas. And within a year after moving back to Arkansas, I had found out that Casey had started doing drugs. And then I ended up doing them as well with him. And that's when it really got serious, the addiction.
Yeah.
Um,
Talk to me about how it got serious, because the addiction got serious. You ended up going to prison for, was it stealing or what was it that you ended up going to prison for? Like, I mean, it really did get. I mean, as a mom, I would think one of the worst. Like, I don't know what would be much lower, and that's no judgment on you. Please
oh
know that.
yeah.
But as a mom, like having your kid taken away, you know, like that had to have been so hard. So talk to us about, you know, like it's good. You know, where are you at? Do you guys have kids together at this point? Like, what does it start looking like? Do you ever see yourself in this? You know, is there a moment where you kind of look around and you're like, what the fuck? Or
Hmm.
is it a whirlwind? Because I mean, these and I'm sorry if these questions sound like stupid, but I don't understand. Like I've not experienced that. And so for anyone else like me out there who hasn't, who maybe has someone in their life who is in a situation similar to yours, I think this is so important, because it helps me to understand my cousin. You know, it
Yeah.
helps me to kind of understand some of this. So with as much detail only as you want to share, like please note you do not have to share anything you don't want to. But
So it spiraled pretty quickly. It started out, I was just going to do it one time with my husband, and then that one time turned into every weekend. At this point, we had Cameron and Jasmine. Jasmine was probably around 5 years old, which would have put Cameron around 8 years old. And this was back in like the end of 2013 or 2013. Yeah, it was actually, no, okay, around spring of 2013. I was in beauty school at the time. I was working, and you know, life just felt really hard. And we started doing meth, and we started, you know, like I said, started out doing it just on the weekends. But what happens is if you just do it on the weekends, you stay up all weekend. Then when Monday rolls around and you got to go to work or you got to go to school, you have to get through it. So you keep doing the drugs to keep you awake until you have time to rest, and or until your body forces you to rest and you fall asleep for days at a time. So I could tell, you know, it was bad. I didn't want to be living my life that way, but at the same time, when you're in the midst of it, like it feels good. and
Mm.
you enjoy it. Like there are things that you enjoy about it. Like for me, I enjoyed the energy that I had to clean my house and, just to take care of business, to do my homework and things like that. But I ended up getting pregnant with Peyton, my youngest, in the midst of that addiction. And unlike my pregnancy with Cameron, I I couldn't quit. I did not quit. And so I did drugs nearly the entire pregnancy. I quit 3 days before she was born. So, um, and that is a very vulnerable thing for me to share, especially publicly, but I share it so that you can know the extent of the addiction because I love my children. I love my children, but when the addiction is like chains. It's literally like a prison. And when your life, when you're struggling with finances and problems in your relationship with your husband, I mean, both of us had a lot of trauma to heal over the course of our marriage, and we were still pretty babies at that point. So, um, and I spent the entire pregnancy just feeling guilty, and but at the same time, like I just couldn't put it down. I just couldn't quit. And toward the end of the pregnancy, I was at about 31 weeks, and I was like, okay, I have to quit, because if I don't quit, then they're going to drug test my baby and they're going to take my baby away. So I quit, and I was just like sleeping just constantly for like several days. But in the midst of that, I noticed that I was leaking amniotic fluid. And so I went to the hospital, scared to death. I thought they were going to take my baby. But I knew I had to go because I was scared. And I was one of those drug addicts. Like, you couldn't tell that I was a drug addict unless you were my mom and you knew me really well. Nobody knew. Nobody knew. I was in beauty school. I was around lots of other people. I'm sure I did some weird, tweaker stuff. If you've ever been around tweakers, like they do like weird stuff with their jaw or like their hands or like, like stuff like that. I'm sure some people probably could have told, but so I go to the hospital and I find out I'm really sick. Got like some sort of like major infection, which meth will do that to you. Not only are you not sleeping, giving your body the recovery rest that you need, but you're not eating either. So you're not giving your body the nutrition that you need. And, I ate every day, but probably not nearly what I should have been considering I was pregnant. And so I quit. And then 3 days later, I was in the hospital and they told me that I had to have an emergency C-section at 31 weeks. Because they said that they could treat the infection better if they treated the baby separately and me separately. And so I was like, okay. And nobody at the hospital had any idea that I was pregnant. Because, I mean, what you guys see, that's what everybody else saw. I was able to put on this mask and I was just this perfect mommy that loved her kids and took care of her kids. Nobody knew that our house was a mess and that I was falling apart inside. So we had the baby. She was born at 3 pounds, 3 ounces. And she had sepsis and she had to be life flighted to Little Rock, to the Children's Hospital. And my mom, she knew I was on drugs, and she told me that she prayed so hard. She's like, oh God, please don't let her lose this baby. She knew it would destroy me because I knew it was my fault. I take ownership. I know that I shouldn't have been doing those things. But guys, I'm telling you, sometimes addiction, you don't have that willpower. And so I didn't get to hold my daughter until she was 5 days old. I prayed and I called on anybody that I knew that prayed, and we just prayed for her. She spent 6 weeks in the hospital, and we brought her home 6 weeks later, and she's done nothing but improved. If you look at her now, you would never know that she was born premature. You would never know. Like, she's an intelligent child, all of those things. But even after all of that, after all of it, everything settled down and we got home and we had the baby home, I went right back to doing meth, right back to it. And we had a period of time, maybe about 6 months, just vicious cycles. The fighting between my husband and I got really, really bad. When you have all this negative energy flowing inside of you, you don't react in ways that are normal. You begin to be very defensive and like on edge. And so we were constantly fighting, constantly. And, in the fights, it's always like, well, why don't you just leave? And, he would say those things to me. And eventually one day I woke up and I was like, okay, I got to get out of here. I got to get my kids out of here. During that time, my son we were having a conversation, just talking about how long me and dad had been married and this and that. And he put 2 and 2 together, being the smart 9-year-old that he was. And he figured out, wait, does that mean dad's not really my dad? And so he put that together. And then he said, is that why dad's so mean to me? And, he was mean to all of us. And we were mean to each other. I don't want to paint a bad picture about my husband. He is a wonderful man. He's a wonderful father. But when you're on drugs, that's not who you are. The drugs take over. There are dark negative forces that come in. And not to say that you don't take your own accountability for your actions, but there are energetic influences because it lowers your vibration. I didn't understand this at the time, but they lower your vibration. And so after that, my eyes were open. I was like, I got to get my kids out of here. So I called my mom. I asked my mom if I could come live with her. And one morning, my husband was asleep. I packed all of our stuff. He woke up right as we were getting ready to leave. And, it wasn't a goodbye forever. I knew that we were going to get back together. And I told him, I said, I can't live like this anymore. I have to get the kids out of here. I love you. And I just need you to do whatever it takes to overcome this. We have got to do something different for our kids. And I remember taking the gun just in case, because, I didn't want my husband to do anything, that type of situation. So I left and went and lived with my mom, and I started to get better. Casey started to get better, and the kids were doing really well. And things were getting so much better that I felt like it was time for us to move back in together. And so we did. And then I found out that it was a mask, that, things weren't really better. They just appeared to be better. And I found out that my husband was still doing drugs. And I don't know. I don't know what is it that would make me choose to do them again rather than turn around and leave. And, I don't know. I can't tell you why I chose to do that, but I started doing drugs again. And this time we started selling them. And it was really enticing because, we'd been poor for so long. We had struggled for so long. And all of a sudden we had money. We had money to buy groceries. We had money to pay our rent, our electric bill. Like, it was nice. It was nice to have that life. Plus, you basically get free drugs because, you get it at a discount when you buy in bulk, just like Sam's Club.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, the more you buy, the cheaper they are. So if you buy them, you spend this large amount, and then you sell them, then you get, you basically get to support your habit basically for free. Although it's not really for free, because you could have made more money if you weren't doing your own supply. But, that's kind of how you look at it as an addict. And things just, they got worse and worse and worse. Our house just started falling apart. I didn't have the ability to focus, to clean. I could barely even take my kids to the doctor. Like all I cared about was getting high and doing tweaker shit. And at one point, my husband was out of town and he calls me up and he says, "Hey, somebody wants to buy something. I've met this guy before. You've never met him, but he's cool. Can you go ahead and take care of this for me since I'm out of town?" He drove all the way here from Northwest Arkansas. So I was like, okay, which I normally didn't deal with that aspect of it. But I was like, okay, I knew how to do that. The guy came in. My kids were in the living room. I put my kids in the bedroom and I did the deal. And I remember in hindsight, and this is another thing about drugs, is they block your spiritual intuition. They block your discernment. So, but looking back now, like I remember telling a friend, my spidey senses were tingling. I could feel something was off, but I just thought it was nervousness because I didn't know this guy.
Right.
And just a few months after that, I'll never forget the day, September 15th, 2015, my house was raided. All three of my kids were there. We had been up probably for a couple of days, and I was in like this little shop. I was doing a tweaker project. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I remember looking up and all of a sudden there were cops in the room that I was in, and I'm like, what the fuck? And so my husband was getting ready to go take our four-wheeler. We lived by the river bottoms here in Fort Smith. If you're from this area, you'll know what that means. So it was on the north side, and we could drive just right down the street and we could access some trails by the river bottoms. And so he was getting ready to go do that. And I was just, waiting to wake the kids up and start getting the kids ready for school. And my husband, right before he leaves, he said he saw an SUV turn down our street, and then he saw another one. And so he ran inside and he got our drugs and he flushed them down the toilet because he knew they were coming for us. And so they got me in handcuffs. I didn't even see my husband. He was gone before they took me out of the room that I was in. I didn't know what happened to him. I didn't know if he had left, or I didn't know anything until later on. My kids were still asleep inside the house. Even they rammed the door open and all of that. My kids slept through all of it. They woke up at like a normal time, and I was standing in the front yard in handcuffs, just a cop standing by me. My daughter comes out, my Jasmine. At the time, she was probably 6 or 7. And she goes to hug me, and then she realizes that I have handcuffs on. My arms are handcuffed behind my back. And she's like, "Mommy, what's going on?" She was scared. And I said, "Mommy's in big trouble, baby. I don't know what's going to happen, but you're probably not going to see me for a long time." And the other kids woke up. Peyton was only 18 months old at the time, just a baby. She was running around and laughing, and the kids were trying to keep up with her. I told the cops, I said, if you take the cuffs off, I can help you take care of her. I can help them. I said, I promise you, I won't run away. I won't try to run. And I got, oh God, the whole time they were going through my house, it just sounded like they were just throwing shit everywhere, just digging through everything inside. But I sat on the front porch with my kids, and we read books and we looked at pictures, and I got a really beautiful time with them to calm them. And like how the hell I held it together, I don't even know, because I knew I was in big trouble. I knew it. And I begged the officer, please don't call DHS. My mom is a really good person and she'll take my kids. Please let me call my mom. And this is another thing I'll never forget. He said, I can't do that because if you get out, then you'll be able to get your kids right back, and you don't deserve that. And, he was right. I didn't deserve it. I was not the mother that I could be. I was not. I mean, my kids were basically taken care of. They were loved. I didn't abuse them, but they were neglected. Our house was filthy. It was not good. It was not good. So, love is not enough in that type of situation, although that's what I lied to myself and told myself that it was, well, they're loved, they have clean clothes, I get them to school and all of those things. But when DHS got there, so my kids had bug bites all over them. I guess we had gotten bed bugs, and I actually didn't realize it. I thought they were just mosquito bites. And so that looked really bad. And they just talked to me for a little while, and then they're like, well, it's time to go. And I felt like the lady, the social worker, I felt like she could see me, like, underneath the drug addict. I felt like she could see me, and I felt that she did have compassion. And she said, it's okay, it's time for us to go. And I said, I packed my kids up, and I thought maybe I was going with them. Maybe they needed to ask me more questions or what. I wasn't sure. And after we packed them up and they were in, I said, I'm not going with you guys, am I? And she was like, no, honey, no. And so, she ended up leaving. I didn't actually say goodbye to my kids, which I found out later that was really hard for them because they thought I was coming with them. But they were taken, the older two were taken to group homes. And then the youngest was put in a foster home. And I got to the jail, and I was just so numb. I was in shock. I couldn't see anything. I got in the holding cell, and I put my knees up like this, and then I just put my head down like this. And I just sat there for hours and hours and hours, just waiting for somebody to come. And they booked me in around midnight, and I went to my cell. I got a sheet to lay on the floor and a sheet to cover up with. I don't even think I was given a pillow or anything else. They didn't have anything. And that's when it kicked in, and I just started crying and crying and crying because I was like, oh my God, I could not believe it. I could not believe it. Although I didn't feel like I didn't deserve to be there. I knew that I did. But my kids didn't deserve what they were going through. And that was the hardest part for me was, I knew what it was like in foster care. I had been there. It's hard. Some people get lucky, and there are good foster families, but a lot of them are very abusive. And I didn't know what was happening to my kids. And so in that moment, I prayed, and I just said, God, I will devote my life to you. Please just make sure my kids are okay. Please take care of my kids. And I knew that God heard me because my bunkie, my cellmate, she couldn't speak English, but she heard me crying that night. And the next day, she gave me a piece of paper with the Lord's Prayer on it. She copied it out of the English Bible for me and gave that to me. And that gave me hope. I knew that God was with me, and I knew that God was, he was going to work it for the good. And I didn't even know about that scripture yet. I started studying my Bible, reading, and my mom got custody of my kids 2 months later. And after that, I could breathe. It was easy, there was some trauma for my son. I don't really want to talk about that because that's his story, but I was given, I had a social worker come and visit me in the jail, and she told me what happened. And, so there was a little bit of trauma, but he's okay now. But so for 2 years, almost 2 years. It was 1 month shy of 2 years. I was incarcerated. I spent some time in the county jail, and then I got transferred to Aliceville, Alabama. So I was on a federal indictment, conspiracy to distribute methamphetamine. And I don't know why they always do the conspiracy. They had the evidence, with the guy that I sold to, that my spidey senses were tingling. He was an undercover agent. So my husband had multiple transactions selling to that guy, and I had one transaction selling to that guy. And we had to wait almost a year for a court date. And I was praying that I would just get probation. I hadn't been in trouble in my adult life, and I felt like I had learned my lesson. And even my husband, he was like, let me do the time, like, just let her go so she can take care of the kids. But it didn't work out that way. They gave me 30 months, and they gave my husband 60. And honestly, like, prison, like the jail, awful. The people that run that place should be ashamed of themselves, because they treat you like dog shit, worse than dog shit. I mean, they do not see you as a human being. You're the scum of the earth, and they treat you like that. And I made some mistakes, and I had the addiction get the best of me, but deep down, I'm still me. I'm still a good person, a lover of animals and people, and but I just, during that time, I just focused on learning the Bible and sharing my story, and I just focused on being a light in that very dark place. And I impacted a lot of people, even though I barely, I barely had the knowledge. And, people would want to come up to me wanting to do Bible study with me. I'm like, well, I don't really know the Bible, but we can learn it together,
Right.
And there was just experience after experience where God was like, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with you. You're going to get through this. I'm with you. Your kids are okay. You're going to get through this. And I did. And I made some beautiful connections when I got to prison, even in the jail. But in the jail, people were kind of revolving. Once you get to prison, people are there more long term. So I made some beautiful connections, and I had some women that really felt like family to me, like sisters that had my back and that loved me, and I loved them. And, we just really connected, and I'm so grateful for that. And then I had access to church and like Bible studies with other Christians, and that was really helpful. But I had a lot of time to think about who I wanted to be, the type of wife. And I would pray. I would lead prayer circles, and I would pray, God, help us be the women that you want us to be. Help us be the mom that you want us to be, the wife that you want us to be. And I just had a lot of time to think, like, what do I want my life to look like? I want to own a house.
Right.
I want to have a good job. I want to take care of my kids. I don't want my kids to have to worry about anything. And I got out of prison in August of 2017. And, I'd like to say that was the end of my story with the addiction, but it wasn't. I didn't go back to meth, but so I was out in 2017. Casey got out in 2020. That same year, we bought a house. That same year, I also ended up getting a job at Tacos for Life as a manager. And that's when the alcohol drinking started. And, after you get off, or even when you're on federal probation, as long as you don't use alcohol in excess, you're actually allowed to drink. And so there were a couple times where I had some wine and stuff. It wasn't a big deal. But my life, as a manager, and then my son was going through a lot, as a teenager, just finding his own way. And I was just really stressed out, and I couldn't cope with the stress. And so I started drinking wine every night. And then the wine, it didn't really make sense to keep that up because it took more wine to get drunk than if I just bought, like whiskey. So I started drinking whiskey every night. And at first, my husband, he really didn't drink very much. But as time went on and it became more of a habit, he started drinking, every day heavily. The both of us, we 4 o'clock, screw 5 o'clock, 3, 4, 5, couldn't get here soon enough. Every day, our whole lives revolved around it. It took probably about 6 months for it to really become a habit. So from October of 2020 till like around March, I'd say around March is when it really started getting bad. And eventually, it was, I started even drinking during the day. I would wake up. I developed this almost crippling anxiety. And it was a literal feeling in my body, like butterflies in your stomach, heart squeezing. And I did not know how to cope with that feeling. I didn't know how to cope. Now, the back of my head, I knew that I could pray and, those types of things. And I did try that.
Right.
But I didn't know about the energy. And the
Right.
energy is what was in there. And I'm sure, a lot of it is just stuff that had been built up for my whole life that I just
Right.
wasn't even aware of. And so and not even my husband knew this. He didn't know that I was drinking during the day. I would drink before I went into work at Tacos for Life. Sometimes I would go to the store and I would buy like little wine coolers or whatever, and I'd like down a couple in the parking lot before I came back in from the store. And then I started working from home. And then I'd wake up every day, I'd take my kids to school or whatever, get back in a couple hours, drink coffee, whatever. And then about 10 a.m., I'm ready for a drink. And so I'd sneak a shot. I would, and then after it wore off and the anxiety would start coming back, I'd take another shot or two, because at that point your tolerance is building up after that first drink. And I lived my life like that for about 3 years. 3 years of just being a slave to alcohol.
And at this point, had your husband, had Casey, figured out how severe your drinking was, or did he still think it was a 3 or 4 o'clock thing?
Yeah, I think there were a few times where he came home early, or like I would catch him, he would hug me, and then he would try to kiss me, and then he would sniff my breath. So he was catching on. And he was noticing, but in those, he didn't know that I was taking drinks first thing in the morning. At this point it's like in the afternoon, and he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, who cares? Fuck it. Just, at typical addict behavior, you just do anything you can to protect yourself to be able to keep doing what you're doing, because that is serving a purpose. It is filling a void inside your heart. I saw somebody make the comment about addiction is filling a void that spirit wants to fill. And that's true. That's true. But I still read my Bible. I was still going to church. God was very much a part of my life. Now, I did feel ashamed for the life I was living. I felt like it was not what God wanted for my life. But at the same time, I felt like God was still with me. And I felt like God was giving me grace. I felt the grace of God. And I knew that quitting was up to me. It was up to me whenever I was ready. And, I can't tell you how many times I drank and drive. And even with my kids in the car, they didn't know I was drunk. Nobody could tell. I could drink a lot of alcohol. Nobody could tell. Nobody could tell at work that I was drunk. Even if I felt like my words would start slurring, I knew how to enunciate and to make it sound like I wasn't drunk. So I was really good at hiding it. I was really, really good at hiding it. And tried to quit a couple of times. A huge turning point for me was when I had my spiritual awakening in the summer of 2023. And that's when I decided I wasn't a Christian anymore. I wasn't leaving Christianity without Jesus, though. I took Jesus with me. I still have a very strong relationship with Jesus, and I follow him. And I decided, I was going to continue to embody the love of Jesus and try to live my life loving people like he did. And I tried quitting a few months after I had my spiritual awakening. I did it using mantras. I just would wake up in the morning and just say, I am not drinking today. I am not drinking today. I am not drinking today. And I would say it over and over and over. And I'd get to the whole end of the day and I wouldn't drink. And I did that for 30 days. And I felt really good and really proud of myself. And then we thought that, and Casey quit too. And then we thought that we could just drink on the weekends. So we started buying alcohol and drinking on the weekends. And then it creeped right back up to where it was before, drinking, a gallon. We'd buy the gallons of whiskey and we'd drink that in 2 days between the two of us. I was drinking the majority of it, though, I'll say. I drank because I was sneaking it. You know what I mean? So flash forward to 2024. And I discovered Julie Poole on YouTube. She's a tarot reader. And, I was getting into all the spiritual stuff since my spiritual awakening, learning about numerology. I already knew about tarot, but, I was just re-exploring things. And I was watching these videos like weekly or whatever. And a lot of stuff was speaking to me of the card readings for Libra. And I remember, and there were some things happening at that time. My son was in a relationship with a lovely young girl. I think maybe experienced some trauma in her life, though. She, a beautiful, beautiful girl, but there were some issues. And Cameron, she got pregnant, and Cameron told me that she was trying to say that I would not be allowed to see my grandchild because of all the drinking that I do. And that was kind of a wake-up call, I was pretty devastated. But, it kind of woke me up, like I didn't quit for that reason. And she ended up having a miscarriage. We're so sad about that, of course. But Lindsay, my birthday is October 17th. So what was I saying?
She unfortunately had a miscarriage, and you were very sad
Yes,
about that.
yes. But even at that point, before I even knew that, I just decided I was going to quit. There is no way, I don't care what hoops I have to jump through. If I've got a grandchild, I have to see my grandbaby, I can't not be a part of that child's life. And because, it's the nurture, it's the mother in me. And I've always looked forward to my kids having kids someday. But it was really hurtful, some of the things that she said about me, but they were true. They were true. So I couldn't be mad at her. And I wasn't mad at her, but I was going to do whatever. No worries, Lindsay. I was going to do whatever it took. And so I saw that tarot, this one particular reading, and the devil card came out.
Oh.
And she mentioned addiction and, or something you're struggling with. And she said, okay, so Spirit's telling me that if you want to let this go, the energy's right. All you have to do is align with it. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, is that it? Is that all I have to do? So I just started thinking about that. And I started thinking about, you know, I didn't feel good about being an alcoholic. I felt bad about it. I wanted to do things with my life. I became a healer. And I mean, at this point, I had already, started Sacred Heart Alternative Therapy. I'm doing sound baths and working with people and posting stuff on social media. And I've got this huge mask on. Nobody knows that I am a closet alcoholic. Nobody except for my family, you know? And like the whole family knew. Everybody that if you came to family functions, like there were multiple times where I got blackout drunk, So I knew that Memorial Day was coming up, and I knew that our family would have a party. And so I decided after that party, I was going to quit. And my reasoning on it is that I had enough time between that party and the 4th of July to distance myself from not being around it. And it was crazy because once I aligned with it, like the other times where I quit, except for that one time when I walked away, when I left, Casey, just so we can improve or whatever. I lived with my mom for like 6 months, then I had the strength. But other than that, there was always an incident that happened. Getting pregnant with my son, going to prison, things like that, stuff that happened that I had to quit, or I felt like I had to.
Right.
But drinking is so socially acceptable that, I mean, you can always find somebody who is just about as bad as you are. And it's not bad, but it's just that it holds you back from being the best that you can be. I don't want to say like, there are plenty of people that can drink alcohol. They can have 1 or 2 drinks, and they're fine. They're fine. And at one point I was one of those people. But now that it became a demon for me and something that I lived in chains with, I can't do that. I can't even have 1 drop. Like I know myself from the times that I have overcome addiction and then got sucked right back in just because I thought I could just do it one time. And it doesn't work like that for me. Maybe for some people it does. I don't know. But it's not a good idea. It's not a good idea to chance it. And I decided that my life was, the things that I wanted for my life. I want to make an impact in the world. I want to help heal people. But I realized at that point I had a lot of healing to do myself, a lot of stuff that I had not dealt with. And I started dealing with it, and I started meditating like very routinely. And I aligned with sobriety. So it wasn't like, oh, you can't have alcohol. I was aligning with a higher timeline. I was aligning with, higher frequency. And that energy is what gave me the power, and that healing work that I did is what gave me like the ability to like, or that reduced the anxiety that I had going on in my body that was causing me to want to drink. So once I started getting to the root of the issues, I was able to walk away, and I was able to, I quit May 30th, 2024 was the last time I had a drink. I have not had a drop to drink since. I haven't even like the family, they don't even have to not drink at parties or anything. Like within a few months, I knew that I had overcome it. Casey and we went on a like a weekend getaway. He took me away for like our anniversary. It was just because he just wanted to surprise me. And he had gotten a charcuterie board that came with wine. And he's like, it comes with wine. He's like, I can have him take it away. And he's like, if you feel like you want to drink it, like, I'm not going to tell you can't. I don't think it's a good idea, but I'm not going to like tell you can't. I'm like, I don't think it's a good idea. And that bottle sat in the room the whole weekend, and I didn't even think about drinking it. And that's how I knew. And that had been May, June, July, August. So 3 months. 3 months. Right. And I was to the point where, you know, and of course, life was getting better by that point, though. It wasn't as stressful, you know, and that just things were shifting and changing. So, like, I wasn't feeling that negative energy and I was doing the healing. So, I didn't feel like I needed to drink.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I mean, sometimes I do still get that anxiety. And when it does come, you know, I just breathe into it. Like, I just like connect with my heart. And then I just breathe into my solar plexus because that's where I feel it. That's where I feel the anxiety.
Right, right.
And after a few breaths, it'll go away. So, um, yeah. So that's my story with addiction. And I would say, you know, anybody that's watching, I know this was like a really long live. And if you're watching the replay, this is really long. But if you are still struggling, if you are in addiction and you want something different for your life, like you can achieve that. You can achieve that. You do have the power inside of you. And you know, if you need support, I recommend finding people who can be in your circle that are going to support you, and you know, just changing your habits. When I quit drinking alcohol, I had to start doing things completely different. I had to I couldn't get off work and just sit on the couch. I had to stay busy. I had to keep my mind busy to distract myself from thinking about drinking. But the more I did that, the easier it got. And now I don't even think about drinking anymore. I don't miss it. I don't think about it. I don't in social situations, you know, I do wish I could have a drink, but I know myself well enough to know that I just can't do that. And plus, with the spiritual work that I'm doing in the world, I feel like it would be a disservice to the people that look up to me, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's, that's um it's hard to do for me. It's hard to do that level of spiritual work to help others to heal and to heal ourselves when we're not at our best. And nobody's perfect. I had
No.
times where I'm like, I probably, but you know, I just I can't thank you enough for sharing this story. And guys, this is a story that I knew way, way back. And so as I got to know Amber, the appreciation just mounted because I knew this and I knew you all didn't know this. And I'm always very mindful with my friends because, as with any friend group, people that are in the inner circle, you're going to know more. And so I'm always very, very careful not to overstep or share. But it has caused me to just have such admiration for you, really,
Thank you.
because um, it is not easy what you've done. And you're not out there shouting it from the rooftops of, I used to do this and now I'm healed and I'm better and you should listen to me. You're you're living the example. And that is what's most important, I think, in life is the people that are screaming it from the rooftops and demanding your attention. They might not be the ones to pay attention to, but the ones that are just going about it. And now you own your home. You
Mhm.
are this close to being a licensed real estate professional in the state of Arkansas. You are honestly one of the sweetest people that I know. I seem to surround myself with these women that are just like grounded and kind and amazing, like Karina and Amber. And then I feel like, and then there's me, I'm just like, but of anybody that I know, and I say this with the most like I don't know that it's going to come out right, but if anybody that I ever knew had a reason to be really pissed at the world and not kind, like it would be you. But you are the nicest person that I know. And guys, I'm not joking. Sometimes I stomp around this RV. Oh, I get so mad over things. And then I stop and I'm like, chick, what are you really pissed about? Like,
Yeah.
what really is so bad in your life that you're just acting like this crazed lunatic idiot over here? Because there's just, and I do think that even though I've not had the struggles that you've had, I don't have to have those struggles to appreciate what you've gone through and to see the
Yeah.
value of your light and to see and to learn from that of like, um there are times when I think we have to check ourselves
Yeah.
and and we really have to say, wait a minute. And it doesn't come from a place of being better or anything. It's different. And when you can, it motivates me. You motivate me. Karina motivates me. Ben motivates me. Even my friend Eva motivates me. All of my friends motivate me in some way. But it's I just want to honor the vulnerability in you for coming on and sharing this. Um, and when you said, yeah, let's talk about my story, I was like, okay, well, you stop it wherever you want to stop it, and we just went through the whole thing. And
Yeah.
even though, I mean, yeah, it's been almost 2 hours, it doesn't feel like 2 hours. It just feels like we've just been sitting here having a conversation.
Hmm.
And what I loved, and I love that you guys chat in the chat, but what I've loved is that I feel like people have really been paying attention as opposed to chatting amongst themselves. Like, I feel like
Hmm.
people are really engaged and wanting to listen. And, we've been talking in the healing circle about community. And
Hmm.
this is what community looks like. It's coming together and it's sharing our stories and um, just being honest. And I'm just so thankful. Yeah, Ben says it really doesn't feel like it's been that long. No, it doesn't. It doesn't feel like it at all. Um, is there any? I just can't say how proud I am of you. Like, I'm
Thank
just
you.
so proud and honored to have you as a friend. I'm so thankful Cynthia introduced us. What would be something that you would say to somebody right now that's struggling, with this, or maybe they're like me and they've got a family member who struggles with it. And, so what would your advice be to the person that, because isn't that part of the prayer in AA? Am I making this up? It's like to be with the people that don't know that they're addicted yet or something like that. Like, is that part of that? Am I making that up? Maybe I'm making
I'm
that up.
not
I thought I
sure.
heard somewhere. But like, what would you say to the people that are maybe having listened to your story, like, oh, that's really kind of where I am? What would you say to them, and what would you say to the family of somebody who's struggling, you
Well,
know?
first, just speaking to somebody who's struggling with addiction, whether that's drugs or alcohol, or shopping, or sex, or pornography, because addiction does not stop at drugs and alcohol. Like, I've been addicted to Candy Crush before. Like, I neglected shit and like did it, stayed up to like it can be anything. So if there's something in your life, drugs are just more prevalent. You know that it's an addiction. Habits or things that you do, it may not be as recognizable, but I would say that, start working on your healing.
Mhm.
Start working on um start working on looking at your story, your life, and try to figure out, when did these feelings start? Because nobody starts using for no reason. There's a
Right.
reason. Either, like, I mean, for some people, you just want to fit in and you want to be accepted in a group. For other people, your parents did it, and, like, you've just seen them and that's all you've ever known. So you start.
Mhm.
Whatever the reason is, there is a reason that you start abusing a substance, or, that you become addicted to something. And so I would look at the root, get to the source of the feeling, because in that source there's energy there that's stuck in your body. And if you release that energy, then you can start to align with sobriety or freedom, as I like to call it, because and I know it's hard to not feel guilty, but give yourself grace, because ultimately every single day, like no matter how bad your addiction is, you're doing the best you can. You're doing the best you can. Find support, find people that you can talk to, that you trust. And whether that's on this channel, if you're struggling, like you can come to this channel and you can let us know, and we can just hold space for you. If nothing else, just be like, hey, I'm struggling and I need help. I need energetic support. But you've got to do the work. You've got to get to the root of the problem. I mean, is it you're trying to run from abuse that you experienced? Is it feeling unworthy or feeling like life is hopeless? What's the point? And I mean, many people who become addicts, they just really like the feeling. I like to get high. I like it. I like the head change. I mean, I started at such a young age. I spent a good portion of my life, So, and then to the family member that may know somebody that's struggling, I would say number one, you can't, especially with meth or, the harder drugs, you can't help with money. You cannot. And then if they have kids, I know it's going to be really hard. If you can, try to take the kids, get them out of the situation. A lot of times that can help motivate people. But I mean, if you're giving an addict, somebody who's an active addiction, whether, I'd never give them money, but I mean, if you want to buy them food, whatever, but that's just, if they know they can count on you to bail them out with food and the necessities, and they're going to spend the money that they have on drugs. So keep that in mind. And also, like, endless love and no judgment. I don't care what they do. You got to forgive and you got to love. They need that love more than the judgment and, the criticism that will drive them further into their addiction, because it's up to them individually to decide to walk away. And that's not going to help. You've got to, you just got to be a safe place for them. And it doesn't mean that you allow yourself to be taken advantage of. Please don't do that, because you're only perpetuating the addiction if you do that. But, there is hope. I believe there's hope for every single addict. My mom lives today and she lives a really good life. She's not, my dad unfortunately lost his life to addiction. He committed suicide in 2014, the same year my youngest daughter was born. So, if you still got breath left in you, there's hope. Never lose hope. Never lose hope for yourself or for your family member, because there's always hope. And I would say, get in touch with the spiritual side of yourself, with your soul, with God, whatever you want to call it. Get in touch with that stuff, because it helps. That is what helped me every single time that I've struggled with addiction. It's been God that pulled me out of it. But it wasn't, God won't do it on his own. It cannot happen without your free will. You have to decide.
Cosmic, hello. I'm so glad you're here. Go back and listen to this from the beginning. We are just wrapping up, but I think you are going to really love this conversation. I'm so glad you're here. Let's see. This guy says, I quit meth cold turkey, no problem, when I was 18, but alcohol's a whole different beast. I'm so happy for you, Amber. It is hard to not be there for, financially for your family. Especially if that's an ability that you have and it's something that you've helped people with in the past. It is so hard to say no. And I've had to do that. I've been the person where my cousin has called for, I need food. I will buy you the pizza. Like I will buy
Right.
you, pick it up, and that's what I did. But I had to learn. And so, real quick in closing, I wonder, Ben, if you could put up the link for Smart Recovery, if you could put up the link for 988, and if you could put up Amber's link to her channel. And if you can't, we'll put that up in the comments afterwards. I might put it up in the comments anyway.
Yeah, I tried
Um,
to send that, but I only have like a private chat option, and I don't know
oh,
how to comment in the chat. I
that's
At the
okay.
beginning, that's why I was kind of distracted trying to figure that out.
No, you're good. I don't really know how to do it either, so I always just ask Ben to do it for me. But you guys, please, Smart Recovery is a really great option that I've been made aware of. 988, if you're in crisis or anybody that you know of is in crisis, you can call or text 988, I believe worldwide, and they'll help you. If you're in crisis, they'll help you. If you're dealing with someone who's in crisis, they will help you in that as well. And Smart Recovery is worldwide, and they've got meetings going online um, all the time. And if you see anything, Amber, that you want to address in the last little few minutes while Ben's putting those up, please go ahead. We haven't
Okay,
really
well,
dealt with
I'm just saying,
topic.
okay, I'm not the only one who's been addicted to Candy Crush, and that makes me feel really good. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Makes me feel a lot better about myself. God, it was casino games too. Like I was addicted to meth and addicted to the casino games while I'm addicted to meth. Like that's a thing with people that do meth. They like to gamble. Yeah, because it's all
Oh,
dopamine hits. You're
oh,
depleted. You're relying on meth and other stuff to get those hormones that you need to feel happy. So
right.
wow, that's
Oh,
crazy. I'm not the only one.
there you
Um
go.
I just want to say for this guy, I'm really proud of you because I know that you're working on bettering your life right now and you're making some changes. And even if they don't look perfect, the fact that you're doing something that matters and you'll get it right eventually. I mean, you'll get to a point where you'll look back and you're like, I did this, and
Right.
alcohol, like it was hard, it was hard to decide to walk away because it's socially acceptable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, so, and then let's see. I just wanted to look through these really quick just to see if there was anything.
Absolutely.
Having a good partner is helpful. That is right, Lindsay. She said that a little while ago. That's true. Uh, whenever I quit the second time, I obviously didn't expect my husband to, although whenever I quit alcohol, I mentioned that I had tried to quit after my spiritual awakening and then I quit for real. Well, I just started telling everybody in my family, hey, I'm quitting after this day.
Mm-hmm.
And after that day came and went, Casey was working out of town and he had a half a bottle of Crown. And he's like, I want to show you something. And he dumped it down the sink. He said, I'm done too. I support you, baby. I'm with you on this. And
Oh, that is
yeah, so a supportive partner is great. Having support is really good. And if you are a part of somebody's support system, I don't care how bad they get. I don't care what they do. You got to love them. You can say, hey, that's not healthy for you. That's not healthy for your kids. That's, whatever, but if it's not said in love, if it's said in judgment, it's not going to be received and it's not going to be helpful. It's going to hurt them more than anything.
right.
I think that's
Hi,
it.
Susie. I'm so glad you're here. You're catching the tail end of the live. So go back and watch it from the beginning because you are not going to want to miss this one. I promise. Um, Lindsay said I smoked cigarettes for about 2 months and then quit. That was hard, even just after 2 months.
I'm proud of
Now,
you for quitting. Yeah, that's hard.
yes, that is. I've got to say, I've been fortunate enough in my life. I don't really have any of these big quitting stories, but all of the stories that I hear, like it is not an easy road. And so you guys, like I've said before, I'm not a sobriety channel. I'm not a peer support channel. I'm not going to have the answers that you might be looking for. I can give you resources, we can be here to support you and encourage you because that's what we do here. And if you're sober for 1 day, 1 hour, 1 year, 12 years, I don't care. Come here, we'll celebrate you. If you're having a day and you just need to show up and say, I'm having a day, I just need community, we can hold space for you. So I like to tell everybody I'm not perfect at this, but what I am good at is encouraging people. So you are all welcome here. And so I am so thankful, guys. I am headed out on a plane tomorrow. I am going to Oregon for the weekend. I cannot tell you how excited I am. I actually turned the AC way down in here because it is warm outside to try to get in the mood to pick out my fall clothes because it is hard to look at sweaters when it's almost 100 degrees outside, right? You're just like, this is fucking insanity.
That's funny.
So I turned it way down, which is why I've got this on. Because literally, if you walk outside, I think it feels like almost 90 outside right now. So I'm going to be gone Thursday through Sunday, and then I will be back on Monday of next week. So it's been hectic getting everything together before I head out. My flight leaves tomorrow at 7:40 a.m. I will be landing in Boise, Idaho at around noon. And then we've got another 3.5 hour drive to my friend's place where she's getting married. So, I'm super excited. Let's see. The last time was so hard. I knew I could never go through it again, and I haven't had to. Karen, that is awesome. I love that. All right, you guys, thank you so much for being here. Amber, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful story with us. I know it touched my heart, and I know that it will be a light, to help others. And guys, if this story is going to help anybody else, please share it. Share it in your chats, whatever. So yeah, Ben, yeehaw.
Yeehaw. You cracks me up.
That's it. And that's the thing is, my friend she is a ranch girl. And you guys, I am not a ranch girl. So I am not going to show up looking like a ranch girl. I'm just showing up who I am. She knows what she's getting. And that's what it is.
Yeah.
So
you're gonna look cute on that ranch.
I know. They're gonna be like, she does not fit into this equation. All right. Well, you guys, I hope that you have an absolutely beautiful rest of your week and weekend. I will see you back here on Monday. Remember, we go live at 1:30 Central, unless you hear otherwise. So you guys, as always, thank you so much for being here, and go conquer your world as only you can. We will be here to help you light the way. We'll see you on Monday.
Love you.
When we come together, the storms we can weather. Don't let go of me. We'll get through this, you'll see. Like pictures from the past, we were meant to last. There's nothing we can't